Hey guys, there's this new show called It. I reviewed the movie a while back, but I guess they made it a series on Hulu now, so I'm gonna go over it. It's basically about a few guys actually trying to make moves and do something, while everyone else acts like an op and stalls the progress for no reason. Also, usually when I do these types of videos, I go over characters and then the plots, but this time I'm just gonna go over the plots and talk about the characters along the way. The show is actually extremely story driven, so I guess it would make more sense if I did it this way. So the story starts out with some irrelevant scene and a bunch of goofy scientists catching L's. After that, it cuts to 4 young ones playing checkers or something. The group consists of a small boy, a fat boy, a Negro, and Richard from the movie version of It. These niggas have been playing for 12 hours straight, so we already know that they're deviants. Someone drops a piece and they all forgot who was gonna win until some small boy tells Richard that he would have won. Whatever. So they're all going back home when the boy gets back to the crib only to get finessed by some hitter. So the next day, the boy's mom and brother start panicking because they lost one of the guys and start the search effort. Back at the school, the main boys are getting hoed by 2 guys, which really doesn't make any sense considering there's like 4 of them before, and these 2 guys aren't really that much bigger than them, but you know it's the 80s. Also, Richard has a sister. On to more important matters. The MIA boy's mother called 12 to get her missing son, and at first he ain't God all day, then he was like never mind and all that, and he decides to actually help her. Then there's some kid that runs into a restaurant that looks like a boy but is actually a girl. She tries to finesse some food, but some guy pulls up and makes her think twice. But then the guy gives her food anyway, so I'm not sure why he was flexing. So she tells him her name is Android 11, and I know I never be using real names in these videos, but trust me, it'll pay off when we get through the story. Eventually the boys find out that one of their niggas is MIA, so they start searching for him. But back to the restaurant. The kind man opens the door for some old ass hoe claiming to be a social worker, but then she ups the pull on him and starts dumping for no reason, like what the hell. And it turns out that Android 11 has powers or something, and she makes some of the ops into past tense. So 11 does the race and runs into the guys while they're looking for MIA. So Richard lets her live with him, but then this bitch ass Negro wanna whine about it and start asking questions like he the feds or something, getting on my nerves. So when they go, Richard starts simping and thinking of plans to call the authorities, but then 11 tells him she doesn't know about all that because the social workers be toting heat. Meanwhile, MIA's mom has been wrecking her phones for some reason, so she tries to get 12 to do something about it, but he can't, so she just buys more. Anyway, Richard is still simping for 11, and she reveals that she actually knows the MIA kid, and then this lame ass Negro still wanna snitch on her ass, so she closes the door and tells him that all that talking to the Jake stuff is dead. Later on, she turns the checkers board upside down and reveals that the MIA kid is there, so naturally everyone's like, what the hell does that mean? Also, Richard's sister goes to some party with her lame ass friend, and while she's getting pipes, the friend just sits there and contemplates jumping, until the hitter decides to make the decision for her and get her out of the way. And all this is being photographed by MIA's brother, whose name is like Johnson or something. By now, 12 has found out that all the scientists are behind all the wooziness going on lately, so he pulls up in the lab and finds some security footage that proves that they're really snakes. So he goes to the library, and it turns out some guy called Dr. Bernard has been finessing kids or something, so he thinks he might be the cause of all this nonsense. Also, it turns out that the MIA boy can communicate with his fam through the lights. So Richard's sister's boyfriend's posse pulls up on Johnson and hands him an L because someone snitched and showed them he's been stalking them, and now they think he's a weirdo, so they gotta finesse his camera and generally just hoe him. So the sister and the boyfriend are chilling after their wicked actions when the sister decides to bounce in order to search for her friend that's probably a pack by now. Meanwhile, through the lights, MIA tells his mom that he's been ducking the hitter. Then 11 tries to tell the bums that MIA is actually in the house, but 12 pulls up and shows that he's in a blunt now, so the boys all feel some type of way. So MIA's mother refuses to accept her L, while 12 tries to convince her that it's all just her imagination and that he would know because he's also lost a child, but she's like, no, I'm different, so he's alive. Anyway, it turns out that he actually is alive because 11 put him through a radio. So the guys decide to go to school and use a Heath kit to really start making moves with him. While this is going on, 12 discovers some spooky stuff about MIA's autopsy, so he decides to investigate further. So the guys in 11 get to the school and they have some funeral for MIA, but the bully niggas start making jokes, so Richard has to give them the hand. Before they can retaliate, 11 gives them an even bigger L, while at the same time giving Richard his first W of the series. So the sister pulls up on Johnson and shows him the hit on one of his pictures, so now he thinks that his mom might not be off her meds after all. Also, 12 starts investigating some more and finds out some weirdo stuff is going on, so he pulls up on the lab and goes 007 looking for intel and finds out that the boy really isn't a pack. So the guys try to contact their fallen nigga while he's talking to his mom, but the machine gets destroyed. Meanwhile, 12 gets in deep to the scientist's schemes until he gets knocked out and wakes up in his bed, which looking back doesn't really make any sense because they honestly could have just killed him, but whatever. So MIA's father shows back up, but it turns out he's just a bum trying to get the funds off his death, so the mother gets him out of the way. So the boys ask their teacher how they can travel through dimensions, and somehow he knows, and he tells them that they gotta get a lot of energy in a small place or something. So the guys decide to go to where all their compasses are pointing, and after conducting a complete expedition, it turns out that they've just been going around in circles. So the Negro reaches his peak in annoyingness and steps up to 11, and she reveals that she's been messing with the compasses because she's not trying to go back to the lab. Then Richard and the Negro throw hands, and 11 almost gets the Negro out of the way, so everyone just pussies out. Meanwhile, Richard's sister and Johnson go looking for the Hitta together, and the sister ends up in the other dimension and coming back, so now they really know where the Hitta stays. But when they back to the crib, the sister's boyfriend sees them together and feels some type of way. Meanwhile, 12 realizes he's been looking for 11 this whole time, so he and MIA pull up on 11's mom, and it turns out that it's some government conspiracy or something. Also, the sister's boyfriend got his niggas to graffiti everywhere that the sister is a hoe, so Johnson and him throw hands, and Johnson gets arrested for some reason. Then Richard and the fat boy start looking for 11 when the bully niggas pull up, and they're so pressed about the L they took at school that they're trying to make the boys a hashtag. But once again, 11 manages to save them and give the ops an L, but all is not well because it turns out the feds have spotted them. So the Negro has seen all of this and tells them, and they reunite and do the race together. So the Negro apologizes for being a lame, and 11 accepts. You know, everyone's on the same page. And since 12 knows that the government feds are up to no good, he teamed up with the boys, and all the relevant characters finally meet up in the same place at the same time. So they all go to the middle school and send 11 to the other realm in order to get back the niggas, but Richard's sister's friend has been put on her shirt, so it's too late for her. Then MIA tells 11 to do the dash, so 12 and MIA's mom decide to get the Hitta out of the way once and for all. They pull up on the lab, but then 12 makes a deal with the Bernard to use the portal in exchange for info on where the kids are staying. So 12 and the mom get in the portal and start looking for the MIA boy. While this is going on, Richard's sister and Johnson are also working to get the Hitta out of the way, so they make some chop for it, but then the boyfriend comes out of nowhere and starts spazzing out and just being a nuisance, but they were still able to get the Hitta, so it's whatever. Meanwhile, the feds pull up on the kids, and things are looking dark for the main niggas, but at least 11 was able to put the hoe with the stick in the grave. But then the Hitta pulls up in the schools and starts a spreadshirt line for all the government niggas. Meanwhile, 12 and the mom find MIA and manage to revive him, so that plies out of the way. Back at the school, the Hitta has cornered the boys, and right before he puts them on the news, 11 seemingly sacrifices herself to get him out of the way. So with all the conflicts resolved, the boys go back to playing their lame ass game of checkers. But then later on, the boy that was once MIA spits out some trash, and it looks like the L's have only just begun. And it was so lit they decided to make another season to follow it up. So the second season starts out with some Indian woman and her gang joking and finessing. Meanwhile, the boys go to the arcade, and it turns out that their high school has been beaten by someone else, and they get in their feelings. While this happens, the MIA boy starts seeing the parallel dimension, and since he's not MIA anymore, we'll just call him the small boy again. Then when they get to school, a new girl has moved in, and she has the same GTA name as in the arcade, so they know she's a lame like them. Also, it turns out that the small boy's mom is dating the dad from Drake and Josh. Meanwhile, at the school, Richard's sister tries to invite Johnson to a party, but he ain't trying to see any bumps, so he turns it down. And for some reason, it took me until this scene to realize he was actually in high school. Like, I don't know, this whole time he just looked like a grown-ass man to me. Also, later on, 12 and the mom decide to take the boys to the lab in order to find out why he's having these visions, and the new doctor tells them it is just PTSD, but all the real niggas know the truth. Also, it turns out that 11 is still alive and is being taken care of by 12. She wants to go trick-or-treating, but that's cut cause she gotta stay low-key. Also, the new girl is getting a ride home by her lame-ass stepbrother, and it turns out that he's also a psycho, cause he almost puts the main boys on his shirts. So later on, the boys go trick-or-treating, and the new girl joins them, so the Negro and the fat boy are geeked up, but Richard feels some type of way. But then the small boy has another vision, and the night is officially trash. After all this, the fat kid sees something in the trash can, and he thinks it's a new animal, and he tries to raise it. So the next day, the dad from Jake and Josh tries to give a talk to the boy to get him to stop being a pussy and face his fears. So at school, the boy tells the guys about his new discovery, but then it goes off the loose and they have to find it. While this is going on, 11 decides to make everything difficult and go to the school. And then she feels some type of way when Richard's talking to the new girl and gives her an L. And even though the show is lit, I can't lie, this is like the lamest scene. Also, the fat boy finds his animal, but keeps it a secret because he doesn't want anybody else to get it out of the way. So remembering the talk Walter gave him, the boy tries to face his fears, but only ends up getting violated by the cloud. Meanwhile, the sister and Johnson decide to tell the girl on her shirt's parents that she's on her shirts, but it turns out that the feds have been lurking and they capture them and explain to them that keeping the secret is all a matter of keeping the country safe. But since these niggas are unpatriotic, they still try to find a way to let the world know what's going on. Meanwhile, the boy has been drawing a map of the town because he's now seen everything the cloud can, so 12 decides to go and investigate. Meanwhile, 11 has discovered who her mom is, and she tries to use her powers to chill with her, but it doesn't work out. Also, Richard shows up at the boys' house to try to help, because he ain't really feeling the other niggas at the moment. Also, the fat boy finds the obviously trash animal he found being obviously trash, and eating his cat, and it turns out that it was a young Hitta. So 12 gets to the tunnels, and finds out that this has been the cause of all the nonsense that's been going on in the town. But then he gets trapped down there and has to find a new way out. Then Walter shows up and reveals to the boys' mom the obvious fact that the boys' drawings are all a map of the town. Meanwhile, the fat boy trying to hit up all his niggas to help him deal with his own problem, but they're all busy, so he finds a way to trap it. Then 11 goes to her mom's crib to get some answers, and it turns out that her mom has powers too, and uses the lights to tell her about it. Then she gives her some vision about another girl with powers. Meanwhile, Richard, the boy's mom, and Walter all pull up to the towns in order to save 12, and once they do, all the feds show up and start burning the roots, but apparently the boy's one with the cloud now, and he starts spazzing out. Then he gets put on a stretcher and researched by some scientists. Meanwhile, some guy, the sister, and Johnson make a bunch of tapes to incriminate the feds and send them out to all the stations, and also they decide that they're a couple now. So it turns out that the boy has been losing his memory, and then the doctor shows 12 that the cloud is now one with the boy, and that if they keep burning the roots, then the boy might end up on the paper. So the doctor tries to find a way to get the cloud out of the way, while also keeping the boy alive, but it's a struggle because all the other scientists are assholes. Meanwhile, the fat boy and the sister's ex-boyfriend have been bonding, trying to get the young kid out of the way when they get joined by the Negro and the new girl. But then when they try to trap it, it turns out that the hitter brought the whole gang with him, and they prepare to get all the young ones out of the way. Meanwhile, the boy being possessed by the cloud has turned him into a snake, so he sets up a trap for a bunch of feds that ends up with the hitters coming to the lab and really smoking niggas. Also, meanwhile, 11 meets the other girl with powers, who was like the ending from the beginning of the season, and she's in some gang where she gets her old ops from the lab out of the way. So she gets 11 to slide through on a mission, but before she can turn her op into a pack, she finds out that he has kids, and she doesn't want to associate with the shooters anymore, and also she decides to leave in order to help the niggas actually matter. So the hitters are lining niggas up in the lab and it gets shut down, and since nobody knows how to code, they send Walter down to turn it back on so the other niggas can escape. So when he does that, 12, the boy, his mom, and Richard all manage to do the dash, but right before Walter can join them, he gets put on the ship by some hitter. So they all leave and meet up with the rest of the guys in the show basically. So when they get back to the crib, they tie the boy up because he's a snake now, and they try to hit him with the investigation, but it seems that the cloud has fully possessed him. But then they realize that the boy is still in there somehow. He tells them to close the gates, which is like the portal to the other dimension. But just at that time, all of a sudden, the hitters find out where they are and prepare to make the block hot until 11 shows up and gets him out of the way. So 11 and the niggas have a reunion, and she still feels some type of way about the new girl. Like, it's so dumb because that nigga Richard doesn't even like her. As a matter of fact, I don't even like her, but 11 doesn't even have a reason like us because she ain't even met her. Anyway, Richard also learns that it was 12 keeping 11 away from him, so he gets in his feelings, but then he gets over it. So 12 and 11 go out to shut down the gate between dimensions, while the other guys decides to make a distraction for them so it'll be easier or something. Of course, since there needs to be a conflict, the ex-boyfriend nigga refuses, but then the new girl's stepbrother pulls up and gives him the hands because he's a psycho, and prepares to put them all in another realm until his sister finally sends up to him. Meanwhile, 12 and 11 go to the lab and find the doctor, and they make a deal that when this is all over, 11 can live a normal life. While this is going on, Richard's sister, Johnson, and the boy's mom all try to perform an exorcism by subjecting him to heat, and it works and the cloud gets out of the way. Also, 11 manages to seal the gate and put all the hitters in the dirt at the same time. So a month later, it turns out that the doctor has pulled some strings, and now 11 and 12 are legally family. So the season ends with all the kids in some dance. Honestly, the show is pretty good, so I recommend you all watch it. I know I left out a lot, but that's because I wanted to keep as much relevant information as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I didn't mention, like how much of a fuck nigga the new girl's brother is, or how the ex-boyfriends click be some weirdos. But once again, if you want to see all that, then go watch the show because it's worth it. I give this show a wavy out of lit, and the moral of the story is that ops are looking in every new adventure. Okay guys, make sure that when you subscribe you hit the notification button, because that lets you know whenever I make a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.